Mauri ora tātou, ka nui te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa e te whare, ki ngā rangatira, ki ngā kōka, ngā whaia, ngā pāpa, ngā tamariki, ka nui te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa. Ko pua wai Cairns tōku ingoa, he kaimahi au o tēnei whare, and I'll be kicking us off. He te pai, so māko e tīmata te karakia, mō te pō, he te pai. Matariki te tupua, matariki te tawhito, matariki te kāhui whetū, matariki hunga nui, matariki āhunga nui, matariki manako nui. E tō matariki ki rarora, whano, haramai te toki, haumi e, hui e, nai ora e te whānau. Nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai ki te wharenei, ki te hono ki Hawaii, ki rongo marairoa, ka nui te mihi atu ki a koutou. Yeah. A little bit nervous because there are some very, very fancy manuhiri among you all. So thank you very much for coming out to listen to our equally fancy manuhiri that are sitting behind me in celebration of such an amazing event, the establishment of our first Indigenous public holiday, which is now 3 years in. Let's do this, paki for that, because that is an achievement. And a time when it's really important to remind ourselves of these achievements that we make and have made among us collectively. It's always important just to take note and remember what we've managed to bring together as a country and as a united people, even though there may be some narratives outside that are pointing to fragmentation. But enough of that. I got a few health and safety pānui to give out to you all. Wharepaku, if you are so inclined, are around the corner, so go past our Māori stone and you'll see the wharepaku down the short corridor. In the unlikely event of an emergency or evacuation, please follow guidance from our visitor hosts and anybody who is carrying their te papadongo. Please turn off all your waea pukoro, or at least just to put it on silent, whānau. If you want to take photos on your phone, please turn your flash off. And yeah, enjoy the kōrero. All right. So throughout June, we've been holding a weekly series of matariki talks about kai Māori, mahinga kai practices connected to taonga from our collection. This is the second kōrero in our series, and our kai kōrero are going to be talking about tipuarangi, the whetū associated with all that lives and grows in the trees. Tonight, we're very lucky to have Puke Timoti, a kai rangahau, an ecologist from Manaaki Whenua Landcare Research, working at the intersection of Mātauranga Māori and Western science. Puke was raised by his tūhoi elders in Ruatahuna at the heart of Te Urewera rainforest. He conducts research on biocultural systems, emphasising the preservation of Indigenous knowledge and practices. And the man who needs no introduction, Professor Rangi Mātāmua, Chief Advisor Matariki and Mātauranga Māori at the Ministry of Culture and Heritage. Rangi is a pioneering Māori scholar who has revolutionised understandings of Māori astronomy, and particularly Matariki. Thank you to everyone here tonight and on the live stream for coming in and supporting this Matariki kaupapa. This is a very rare opportunity to hear from environmental specialists of such high calibre. Ngā mihi nunui kia koutou. So I'm going to hand over to our kai kōrero and leave it in their capable hands. O mai te paki.
Apologies, I just lost the clicker. Hey?
Did you have it here? It's not in your jacket.
No, it's not on there.
You got another one?
Just change it up. Okay.
Just ask them for the next slide when you need it, maybe.
Okay. I'll just give you a cue when to flick to the next slide. Tēnā tātou. Nau mai e manu ki taku tuaka, i taku tuaka, i taku aro. Nau mai ko ia. Hoki mai, hoki mai. Hoki mai e te manu ora. Ki tō moena, ki tō uruna. Ki te pai pai tapu a tāne. Hoki mai e te manu ora. Ki tō maunga ko ia e ko e arai. Tuatahi, tēnā tātou. Kua hui hui mai nei. Ki tō tātou kaupapa. Aotirā. Ki te kaupapa matua, ia matariki e karana nei ia tātou katoa. Pua wai ka mihi ki a koe, e taki nei nā karakia ki a tātou i tēnei pō, ka mihi. A tuarua ki nā kaihautū o tō tātou whare, o te papa tēnā koutou katoa. Lastly, I'd just like to welcome everyone into Te Papa. It's a real privilege to be able to pull out some of my ancestors' collections and share some of the narrative that I have today. Next slide, please. Go ahead. Sorry, that was a video. That's a bit of background of myself. So my name's Puke Timoti, born and bred in Ruatahuna in the heart of Te Urewera. We call the heart of Te Ikawa a Māui Tiki Tiki a Taranga. And if you could see there, the fourth largest was the national park in New Zealand. Next, please. So Ruatahuna, so I'm going to speak particularly about my background because this presentation is going to be very biased towards Tipuarangi. So the birds that might be ocean associated, I won't be able to talk to that. So this knowledge comes from centuries of observations and interactions with our environment. And we are truly a forest people. Our knowledge systems are blended with our environment, and in fact our culture is embedded within our natural systems. And often we speak about our language reflecting the way in which our trees move and the sounds of birds and insects in our environment. And so Ruatahuna is a special place to meet. It's about, in total, within our tribe, there's about 45,000 people. About 87% of our tribal members actually live outside of our tribal territory. And in Ruatahuna, there's about 350 people that dwell in Ruatahuna. So we have large conifers, or large trees, in Te Urewera, and many of those trees were cut down in the 50s and 60s. Kia ora. A number of years ago, I came up with a number of whakatauki. And this kōrero, when I talk about our influence on the country, Elsden Best recorded a number of observations made by my elders, and were were kōkako is the origins of the kōkako and the blue mushroom on the $50 note. So the inspiration for the connection between the were were kōkako, or the kōkako, and the were were kōkako derived from my ancestors' knowledge, and so influenced the $50 note. Now, I won't give you the entire detail around that, but there is a relationship between the bird and the mushroom, but I won't say any further. Next, please. And I came up with he wawao kākapo. So traditionally in our forest, we had kākapo dwelling in our environment at Te Urewera. And with our narrative, they obviously dig holes to beat their chest, and we call that a wawao. But the whakatauki is that is commonly used is whakakiki hia nā whāwhārua. Now the hole, the bowls is what they call in the ground, is called a whāwhārua. And the whakatauki is to fill the burrows that the kakapo are making. So if we combine the both. Next slide. He were were kōkako, he wawao kākapo. An astute person attracts the multitudes. Very, quite simple. If you're an elegant speaker, like a kākapo that is well connected to your environment, you often attract many people who come to you for knowledge. Next slide, please. Oh, did you find it? Okay, we've got a clicker now, guys. So I want to talk about these worldviews that we live in. And they help frame a lot of our thinking, and in fact, play out a lot of the driving force within our country and within communities. And so worldviews are a collection of our understanding of how we frame the world. And so a lot of my content, or a lot of the narratives that I would share with you, are handed down pūrākau from generation to generation of the worldviews that we lived in Te Urewera. In terms of our relationship with birds, so we have cultural and spiritual significance to our manu, and they give us mana, and they have mana on themselves. But once a year, there is a survey that happens to nominate the best bird of the year. And this is another component that is driven by Forest and Bird, obviously. But it gives relevance to what is an important bird for you. And so while our country celebrates different kinds of birds, for my culture, there are specific birds that tie in a lot of identity and culture and practice for us that is important to us. So what I wanted to frame in your minds is this simple sequential order, is that our thoughts promote actions, and our actions embed habits. Our habits form our character, and therefore our character inspire or manifest our destiny often. So if you can just think about that in terms of how we value systems and species, if you can just think about that in just the short frame. Now, everyone wants connection. Everyone's searching for some type of connection, whether or not you're Māori or non-Māori. In Tūhoe, we have three types of connection, and that is at the pūmotomoto, so that's up in the Fontenelle, the whenua, or that's your pito, your connection to your land, and your uri, your connection to your descendants. Now, I'd just like to share a pūrākau about birds. Now, in search of knowledge after the separation of Rangi and Papa, Tāne went in search of a higher level of knowledge, and that was kept in the realms of Ranginui. His brother, Rehua, who is the star Antares, kept this particular esoteric knowledge. And so Tāne ventured up into the heavens and met with his brother. And Rehua, once their formalities had come to an end, they shared a meal of birds. And he gifted these birds to Tāne to be gifted, to dwell here in the forest, on the land here. So I just want you to think about this when we look at the huahua taha here. So this here is a taha huahua. It's from Ruatahuna. When Rehua had gifted this type of knowledge, he gifted it in this manner and preserved birds. In our narrative, that is highly tapu. In fact, what he had gifted was the knowledge, the esoteric knowledge kept in that particular medium. And when you look at that particular object, the gifting of it, so knowledge comes from our mind or is gifted from a deity. What comes out of the, is what we call, just above the rim, is called the ihihi for huahua, taha huahua. That is the pūmotomoto. So pūmotomoto, the fontanelle. So when we are born, our heads go through a type of formation that allows it to come through a woman's, through your fire or your mother, and then you come out to the world. And it's at that point that your pūmotomoto is open. And traditionally, we used to use kereru huahua to feed that bit, to mend it. On either side of the skull, is called the kokouri and the kokotea. These are the protectors of that particular knowledge. And so this is gifted to Tāne. So knowledge is gifted. It's flowing, it's fluid, and it's gifted to Tāne in this area. So that's your first knowledge. It's your knowledge to your atua, or knowledge to your God, and knowledge to your education, or to your knowledge systems. Secondly is your whenua. So who here knows where their pito whenua has been planted? So it's quite a common tradition that we return our umbilical cord to the places in which we identify with. And that is a symbol, a spiritual connection that you commit to your land. And so we commit ourselves to this particular whenua, and we have responsibility to this particular environment. And so that is your connection to your whenua. So the whenua is also translated as the placenta of a woman. So the idea is that you go from your biological mother to the land that's going to sustain you. And when you die, when you pass from this earth, you move to that particular whenua. The second part is uri. So your descendants, our connections to our descendants. Our traditions is that when we are born into this world, after a few, often about 4 to 7 days, you're given your first bath. And there are 12 varieties of trees, rongoa, that you are bathed in. It's either 12 or 24, that's the count. This is a commitment, well, within my narrative, you're committing yourself to tāne by soaking into the rongoa that's committed to you. So these are these types of connections that we have within our rohe. And speaking of connection as knowledge and practice, we often talk about knowledge in isolation from practice. And so what I want to help drive here is that the knowledge that I'm going to impart here has connections. And it's never in isolation of something, and that it needs to have action or order to enable you to create a living knowledge system. So mātauranga, when I speak about mātauranga, it has context. Often mātauranga in the past has been confused and decontextualized. And so the mātauranga I share with you tonight has context and it has a place. And so therefore, it has purpose and identity. And so the knowledge that I share with you is from Ruatahuna and Te Urewera. Kia puta matariki, kua mao ka te hinu, kua pūhake tō. When matariki arises, the fat is rendered and sealed. This time of the year, kereru is harvested and rendered at this time of the year. There's only a specific time of the year that you're allowed to harvest kereru. And when matariki rises, that is the indication of the time of the year that harvest season is now finished. And all fat is rendered, and the huahua are then capped, or the fat of the huahua is then capped off or sealed. What I wanted to do, there's quite a lot of components to this. Let's talk about the fundamental principles that drive a worldview to help you understand what it means to connect with different birds, species. So for us, understanding the domains and concepts are fundamental to the relationship we have in our environment, but also to each other. So to provide the cultural norms that we display today. So at the top here, we have whakapapa. So this is whakapapa. This is fundamental to a Māori well-being, well, a Māori understanding of our world. And it's in sequential order. So whakapapa just means a layering of different reference points to identify different aspects of genealogy, of action, or someone stayed at a certain place, or behavior. And so we have whakapapa. It's then connected to these two domains, whenua and tangata. And in whenua and tangata, you have Māori, mana, and ihi on both sides. Now let me just explain that. So whakapapa is the sequential system that portrays the tangible and intangible. It connects your tipuna and defines your obligations to the environment and to each other. It defines your relationship with the environment and the human aspect associated to it. So we are not, within our systems of whakapapa, we are neither the people that dominate over our species, because we are the people who come, and within our creation stories, We are the lower siblings to our species. So whakapapa can also define access to our environments or to our places. And within the domains of whenua and tangata, we find Māori. Now the big question is, what is Māori? There's been many people who have talked about this, but Māori, quite simply, is the life principle or the essence of life, the vitality of life, the life exuding, the zenith of life. It's that life that you see in a person that he is well and living. And that life can be seen in the environment. Here's a nice quote. I remember the reverence and elders had for our forest, the responsibilities that comes with being a leader, the source of life. So we have a responsibility to that Māori from our whakapapa, for the families, especially in terms of food produced by tāne. The other domain is mana. So everything has mana and everything has Māori, but mana emerges from within the sequential order of the whakapapa, relationships that exist through the sequential order. Mana is drawn from the relationships with individuals and communities. The notion of mana can be inherited and provides a person with an unbroken link to their past and future. Mana can also be earned and acquired by an individual grouping of people through their attributes and character. The kereru gives us mana. With that mana comes responsibility. Some practices are spiritual, but they are all akin. One last component I like to talk about is ihi. Now, if you go to a rugby match and you see rugby players displaying a good haka, might give you an indication how well they're going to display. And so, when they are portraying ihi and you receive wehi, the combination of the two gives you wana. And so if you can see that within your environment and your communities, you see this explosion of emotion within these two domains. And I'll give you an example here by a kuia that I had the privilege of being alongside and listened to her stories. She was raised her children deep in Te Urewera forest. 11 of her children were born in the environment.
Pai ke te nui o te mani i rata. He tika tona, rau ke te nui o te mani. A kua haere tuko i te ina wahi, a kua popo te hae. He nui te mani, e rata la koe rā te me. Kua pūhia te nei wahi e te ne. A, pēni pē ki runga te tawhiti o te karahibi. Ana, ka puhi i a e hiana te nei mea. Wahi ki nā manu ki te tari karahibi. A e tama. He pē a hoku i te mea. Tāu mariki te whai. Ka heke ana. Ka heke ana te mana. Ana koina te ahu o te mea. Ka pamu ke te heke o te mana. A kua heke.
So here's the intersect between abundance and mana and Māori being performed in a flock of kereru, where it gets to a point when you go beneath trees and you break a branch and they prue on you to the point where it feels like hail coming down from the canopy, and you hear the flocks lift when they are spooked, and they sound like an Iroquois lifting off out of the canopy. The sheer size of flocks that my elders and ancestors had the privilege of seeing that we just cannot comprehend today. And yet this kuia here in the 40s had witnessed these natural phenomena that happen around this time of the year. So if you can pull together a number of those connections, mana Māori happening within the whakapapa of our environments and our communities, let me talk about some of the artifacts that are over here. So there's a whakatauki in Ruatahuna, ko kaitara ki uta, ko mau tohora ki tai. This is our relationship with our neighbouring iwi Ngāti Awa. Kaitara is a particular tree that is in Ruatahuna. It is a rākau uha, kōuha, a female tree that produced plenty of fruit. Ko Mautohora ki tai is obviously the rock at Mautohora where you find crayfish. So the whakatauki is talking about your delicacies within your regions. And we often shared most of our kaitapu with other iwi that had their delicacies. So toromiro is a particular podocarp. It is the tree that we look to as an indication of the fat of our birds. The whakatauki is he hui hui na manu he uru tau matua, a gathering of birds to a chiefly grove. Now we came up with quite comprehensive strategies to protect our birds and to protect our groves. So a uru tau matua is where you would put the wakakereru. You guys see this wakakereru here? This is a wakakereru, this one. I'm about to fly away. They are then placed in the trees where toromiroa, other uru tau matua, a kahikatea and matai. So these are trees that are not, they are targeted for those particular birds. So the fat on the kereru would be very different if the kereru was eating the fruit of a pirita, or the fruit of a toromiro, or the fruits of a matai. Kereru were only harvested when they were on toromiro. And they would capture possibly 300 every 3 days. So close to 100 a day. This is what I've heard. But because of those sheer abundance, they could. Te oro tū tāpeka, he rākau kaihua, he tīpapa manu, he manu tārake, he rākau kōuha, he rākau toa, he rākau pua. So these are all different trees that we identify. So you have to remember, kereru, when they begin to flock, they know their natural flight paths, and they go to certain trees. Now, you might have trees that are in heavy fruit, but they will not attract kereru. And so you might see 1,000 birds heading to this particular area, and often the kōrero is because that particular tree is sour. And so what they did is go around into those groves and dig out all the saplings in that particular grove that attracted those birds to that particular area. And then they would plant them into their groves. And so they had these orchards scattered in the landscape. So a rākau kaihua, this tipuna is on a rākau kaihua. So this is a particular tree that is frequented by birds. To my understanding, he's snaring kākā there. So that's a tara up on the top, or a mākoi. And he is on the kaihua at the bottom here. There's often platforms positioned at this level, and called a ueha. So this particular tree is a rākau kaihua, which means a tree that produced abundance of birds. Tīpapa manu, oops. So tīpapa manu there only pertains to Toromiro. It means a tree perch, but for Tūhoe it only pertains to Toromiro trees. And so the tīpapa manu, in some areas in our landscape, we would never harvest from that particular tree. But the trees surrounding that particular tree, we would harvest from, because that tree would then draw in all your manu into that region, because they know that region based on the accumulated knowledge over the years and handed down from bird to bird. Manu tarake. So a manu tarake it could be other trees, including matai. A tarake is something that's, rake means to be bright, to be outstanding. So a manu tarake is a place that you know that koko, pihi, and all these other species might frequent. And so you have this huge network of different trees that we maintained every year. Our communities, our people would go out and start to cut the trees that impeded a lot of these particular trees that we look towards. So rākau toa is a male tree. Rākau pua is a female tree. Often a rākau toa will be cut and you just need one male tree to produce seed for the rest of the rākau pua. So the whakatauki is, he tūtū kai hua ki uta, he toka koura ki te moana. A tree for spearing birds, a tree, crayfish rock for crayfish. This karaua here, Te Kotahitanga was the last known person to be spearing kereru in our region. And I think it was in the 1940s. Kahu kereru. Sorry, we weren't able to secure a kahu kereru for you tonight. But the whakatauki is, he ao te rani katau hia, he huru te manu kātau. The day has taken on beauty, and so have the birds of the forest. When our people wore kahu kereru, it's a reflection of the beauty of the landscape that they come from. When they wore these particular kākahu, people would know that you come from that particular region. And the patterns on these kākahu indicated what type of people you are. And so this particular kākahu is framed with kāka feathers and the white chest feathers. Every piece of feather is identified and separated when harvested. So going back to the Māori, when birds are harvested by the males predominantly, they are then given to the females to begin the process of separating the huruhuru. Now the idea is that once the huruhuru, well the kahu kereru is brought together, the idea is that the Māori of your forest has transcended to the person who made or who harvested that bird, who then transcends to the person who made the kahu kereru to yourself. And so you have these different generations replicated in this korowai. In my region, we have what we call a haka kereru. It's a haka about kereru. And I won't do the haka. I might do this bit though. It says, Meka I pēa kunara ho rangi matamua ka hore ho. Ka hore ho. Neke negeti. Neke nekehi. So the haka is about, it's often utilised when you're opening a whare tipuna, because the whare represents tāne, and so does the kereru. When we speak about the kereru, we're speaking about tāne, and when we're speaking about tāne, we're speaking about our whare tipuna. And so there's an interconnection between the two. And this haka is then performed by our elders, particularly the women who lift their skirts and wink at the females and talk to them about how the lands, it's just a promotion of the bounty of the land, indicating that life is with the woman, right? And so when you have food, you have come out of this impoverished state, and you are celebrating the bird's mana and the mauri of that bird. And the women come forward and they start looking at their males and indicating that we create life here. And so while it's an indication of the vitality of your landscape, it's also the vitality of a woman who is connected to this kai. Sorry. That was a particular video. Can I go back on that one? Hey.
Tērā wahe mahi tohunga tērā mai. I mua atu kai, ko kōrero hia, ko tuhia nā kōrero I tāima, I nā waka kereru, e whakairi I hānei nei nā rākau, tērā wā. Rea wahai atau, I tēnei wā, te pakitu anō, te kai whakaneke I e rā kaupapa. Kua tai I te wā, kua tonua, nā mea tamariki hoki haere ki siroi nā tolomiro, nā hui nā uru tolomiro. Hoki mai kua kōrero ai, wāhua, o pai te matomato o te tolomiro kai tēnā rohe, kai tēnā rohe. Haruru ana, o po he au, he hauki tēnei mea wiri e, aruki koe kite. Wai e hoko tino tatamai, ne? Ko te tiro atu, e hoko pēni te mea nei, he paki tara, te whare, e haere ana, ne? Kua hua, tui nā rākau, hua mārake rake hoki te tehi wā. E hoe hara tēnei, haruru ana. Kua hua mataku ke hua tonu, ne? Āmea, ai te hurina mai mātonu, ne? Kua tau mai nei nā pēnei, kua pēnei, te pae nei nā peka o nā rākau. Ki ana I te manu, kua tau pēnā nā pae mai nei te manu. Titi atu kua e hoa, kua taki timu, kua timu. E ho, e ka hua mataku. Kua tua nā huru, nā makawe o te kaki me te tuara, ne? He kō, kei runa, kei te toro miro e tungau ana.
So what is the relevance that we have with our species? Understanding the state and the condition of our environments is really important to us. So when we look to Matariki, we get an indication of what the preamble or what the condition for the following year might look like. And we look to some of our indicators on the landscape to determine that. But to understand is not to just understand the indicators or what their condition is, but is to enact action in order either for harvest or non-harvest for the year. And we have many types of different yearly statuses that we name. So So it's fundamental to the maintenance and growth of our identity and our language and our culture, the integrity of our knowledge systems. So if we're not interacting with our species, that knowledge system becomes quite fractured or isolated. And more so when we have policies like the Wildlife Act and the Conservation Act that prevent us from engaging with our species, that knowledge system then just sits in a space like the museum, where they are just kept at a shelf, and we just come here to talk about it. Fundamental. So it's fundamental to our economy. Our environment is fundamental to our identity as New Zealanders. This is really important to how we portray ourselves as New Zealanders, our relationship with our environment. And it's easy to say that over the last 50 to 100 years, our environments have degraded. But alongside that degradation is our ability to connect to our environment, because a whole lot of number of factors, pollution, biodiversity loss, policies that prevent us from engaging genuinely in terms of not only harvesting our birds, but how we monitor it, and this perception within our communities that we shouldn't harvest. You know, we have to understand, where is that being driven from? Because the reason why we value cows and sheep, it's because it has an economic development to it. But there is so much complexity within how we look in terms of our cultural connections and spiritual connections with our species that give it much more value and importance to us. And yet, as a collaborative community, we are detached from it and so decoupled from it. It is fundamental to our practices to engage genuinely with our forest environments and our species, is to also connect with our atua. And it's the expression of mana motuhake. It's our expression of mana motuhake, action on the landscape, and our relationship to our forest and lands. So I just want to say, tipuarangi, while its association with birds is never in isolation of itself, because we look at other factors within the cluster that give us a reading for the coming year. For me and for my people, our relationship with our species solidify our connection to our environments. And so I just wanted to leave that with you, is that how are you connected with your environments? What's your understanding of your relationship with our species, with our birds, and how are you connecting with them? What are you doing to help create that ihi that is needed within those environments and your communities? So I just want to say one last thing. In Mairohe, they speak about mate mate aone, and it's a redundancy, it's a love connected, a compassion for each other, and a compassion for our environment. This is often captured in the way we spear birds or capture birds. So up the front here, we have a pewa, and it sits just above the canopy, and there's a loop that comes along here, and the bird lands at this point, and it's then pulled. There's usually a hole at this point here. they pull it and it grabs the legs. So that is what a pewa. This is how they captured birds back in the day. And our narrative is that the capturing of birds is to feed your elders, is to feed your chiefs, is to feed your women. But also, as a young hunter, it's to embed in your heart that entire process. So when you're capturing a bird, it retains what a grandmother would do is educate the son to secure food sustainably. And so when they are captured, when the birds are captured here, and this particular one is a better example. You see the hole here? So it's pulled down, so it'll be above the canopy, and it's pulled when they land on that point there. There's nooses at this point, and you pull it down, and you capture their legs. So my people say, when you capture, you're capturing the hearts of the people. You're capturing the hearts of your grandchildren, so they may keep that practice alive. And so that's what I want to leave with us at this time. These taonga, would be nice to see them in action. How do we, as a people, revive a lot of the wisdom that is captured in these taonga, that we may carry it forward into the future? The strategies that we implemented, the philosophies that are associated to it, how do we embed that into today's society? And so at that end, e hoa ma, I'd just like to thank you for coming today. And ngā mihi o matariki ki a koutou katoa. Kia ora tātou.
E hoa puke tēnā koe I ngā kōrero ātāhua I tēnei pō ngā kōrero I hora hei kai mā te hinengaro o tēnā o tātou. Ka nui te mihi, ka nui te mihi. It's awesome to see such a full house tonight. I'm not too sure whether that was for this kōrero or many of you have turned up because you thought there might be some kind of horse and pony show on tonight. I say that because Puke was made famous recently by a video that he put out of him riding a horse. And I had a number of horse jokes that I was going to tell tonight, but I thought to myself, nay. I thought to myself, whoa. This is a museum, not Yellowstone. Puke would be perhaps more at home. He would be absolutely more at home talking about this stuff sitting under a tree on a hill in the bush as opposed to standing in front of you today. A forum for him that's a little bit difficult to talk about his knowledge in the practice of our people. And, you know, I look at those taonga that are laid out before you of an echo into the practices and past of our ancestors. That's what they are. They are species that and implements that speak into a connection to a particular part of the environment, but they're also markers of identity. They're markers of culture. They are scientific implements. How you work out how you set up a pigeon trough or a water trough high up in a particular tree, viewing the habits of a pigeon, knowing that it will come down and drink at a particular time, its head will go through the noose of that trap and you'll catch it in numbers. How you know when the bird's at its best condition, how you know what it's eating, then you know how to preserve it and to
create an artistic as well as a practical implement such as a taha that you would lay out in front of your manuhiri and feed them. All of this practice is built around our identity and is part of our identity. But when you remove the practice and you remove the species, what happens to the identity of a people? When you have generation upon generation upon generation of our people who have followed these practices and built a connection to that species, a cultural keystone species that we sing about, that we haka about. I'd love for you to come to where we're from and I could lay out these implements for you to eat from and feast upon the delicacies of where we're from. But if you turn up to my marae, you'll get pork, chicken, potatoes, pumpkin and stuffing. Just like you'll get at pretty much every other marae in the country. Because we are losing this fundamental basic connection to our environment because it doesn't have the meaning or connection or purpose that it does as we have completely changed our associationship to our environment and it changes our identity. Wouldn't it be cool to come to the museum and come here and look at sheep and cows and rabbits and go outside into the environment and be surrounded by native birds and trees and plants? Wouldn't that be cool? You know why there's so many sheep? Because they're food and we value them. Imagine if we valued these things the same way. They'd be everywhere. And there is a saying, "Whi oro oro te aroaro haki o ngā manu." There were so many birds that their wings flapping clapped like thunder. Now you think about it. You hear one pigeon and how much noise that one pigeon makes. Times that by 1,000. And just imagine the awe and the magnificence of that flock lifting above the canopy and speaking to the health and well-being of our environment. We are coming into the Matariki period. If you start getting up early today and in the next few days, you'll see Matariki is starting to rise and it'll get earlier and earlier in the morning sky. Look east, find Orion's belt or the pot, go a little bit left and you'll see a small cluster of stars. And so Matariki is starting to rise, but we're not in the right time yet. We're close, but we've got to wait until the correct lunar phase. So if you go outside tonight when you leave and you look straight up into the sky, you're going to see a quarter moon. We're in Tamatea Ngana. That's where we are at the moment. Tamatea Ngana, our ancestors always looked to the environment for signs. And I looked up at that sign. It rose just after lunchtime, that moon. I was looking at it today. Tamatea is a name for the white-capped waves on the ocean. So it's not a good time to go to the ocean at the moment. It's also the name of people who are warriors or big leaders, Tamatea. And so I looked at that sign and I realized the Warriors aren't going to lose this weekend. They are not going to lose. And you know how I know? Not because of Tamatea, because they've got a bye. But we're in Tamatea Aio Anana, Tamatea Tamaro Kaeriki Tūhaha, Ariroa Huna Mawharu Ohua Atua Whakahaihai Ōturu, Rākau Nui, Rākau Matohi, Takiro Oeke, Kore Kore Tuatahi, Kore Kore Rawea, Kore Kore Whakapiri, Tangaroa Amua. We are waiting for the Tangaroa lunar phases. There are these phases where we celebrate the bounty of the impending season by observing the main gods that supply us with our sustenance. Tangaroa Amua, Tangaroa Roto, Tangaroa Whakapau, Tangaroa Whāriki Kiokio. Tangaroa, freshwater, saltwater. Then there's Otane, which is Tane, the god of the forest, and Orongo, god of the gardens. These are the stars we wait, or the moon phases where we wait to be in the sky before we look towards Matariki. And they are represented by a number of these stars. This one here, we spoke about this one last week with Mai Cassidy, who came and talked about his eels. It was really interesting, that presentation. Waiti, fresh water. Here we have Tipuarangi, forests, and what Puke spoke about. This is connected to Otane, the lunar phase. So here's Tangaroa, here is Otane, and we celebrate all of the sustenance that we gain from our forests and all of the things above our heads. This one here is Waita. Waita is the ocean, and is connected to all of the creatures that we harvest from the oceans and salt water. And Rere Atamakiha is coming next week, who'll be speaking about this. The brown one over here, this is Tipua Nuku, which is connected to our gardens. So this is where we get our sustenance from. These 4 stars are known as our Whetu Hirikai, or the stars that bring forward the bounty of the year's food. And it's really to help us connect not just to the food sources, but also the environment from which we gather our food from. It's time for us to partake in the bounty of the food that we've gathered throughout the season, but also to understand that we have a responsibility to ensure that that food will still be around for our generations to come, so they can connect to these spaces and these food sources as well. And that's my wish for this star, which is Hiwei Te Rangi, the wishing star, that we think about our environment and we ensure that we maintain and protect it. And I'm glad the star's over here, but it's close to my uncle, because this is also the star that's connected to the Hurricanes that are going to beat his Chiefs team tomorrow. I want to thank you all for coming along. Museums are wonderful places, and they have a lot of taonga. But at the end of the day, these things are wood, flax, and feathers, unless we connect with them in a deeper way. Because what they do is they sit behind a glass case and they deteriorate. That's what happens to them. Puke said something, I really want you to consider this, that mātauranga Māori does not exist in isolation of practice. As soon as we stop practicing something, we might as well put it in a museum. It only lives when it's practiced. And that's the point of Matariki, is we've brought something that our ancestors practiced to share with the nation, so it'll have a purpose and a meaning and a context in our modern society. And I hope it's with that openness and that spirit of sharing and connecting to our environment that we celebrate Matariki. I want to mihi to our staff here at Te Papa Tongarewa, who allow us to pull these things out and show people instead of just keeping them behind a glass case. I want to thank you all. I want to thank Puke, who is, and I have to be careful because we're related. They say, kaua te kumara e kōrero mo tōna reka, you know. But at the moment, we're cuckoos, we're pigeons. And I want to thank him because he's brought a lot of kudos here. Another pigeon joke for those of you that speak Māori. But with his wealth of knowledge that he shared with us tonight in a space that is outside of his natural environment. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi nui kia koutou, me tā tātou kaupapa nāna nei tātou, I tō mai tēnei pō, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Well, ngā mihi anō kia koutou, kia tātou. Such incredible kōrero. And I think as someone who works in this museum, might be having little guilty flashes every time the museum word was talked about tonight. The thing that disarms the power of rarity, which is what museums hold, we hold the power of rare things. The thing that will disarm that power is when abundance is restored back to the community. So the day that you come and you'll look at a taha, or you'll look at the waka kereru and you'll go, my dad's got a better one than that. is the moment that the power shifts away from holding taonga on a shelf to actually seeing the mahi in the community again. So I think there is something here to think on. And I really want to thank Puke, thank Rangi, and thank all of our tohunga, all of our mātanga who are out in the community who are bringing this kōrero to us and bringing it back to the taonga here. So before I hand the rākau back to Rangi to do our karakia whakakapi, I just want to ensure that everybody remembers that we've got the North coming to speak next week. So Rereata Mākiha, Dallas King and Julian Wilcox will be coming Monday, 17th of June, same place, same time. So hoki mai, and come and listen to the kōrero. We'd also like to invite you to stay behind and come and speak with Rangi and Puke and examine the taonga that that's literally been pulled off a shelf for you to come and enjoy and ask questions. So please ensure that you take up the interactivity of this wānanga tonight. So ngā mihi anō, kia ora kōrua, kia ora koutou, and I'll ask Rangi to do our karakia whakakapi. Ngā mihi.
Unuhi o te tapu o tēnei hui o tēnei wānanga o tēnei kaupapa kia wātea, kia puta tātou ki te whai au ki te ao mārama tūturu whiti whakamaua kia tīna. Haumi e hui e, tai ki e afterwards.